So let me show you this. This woman's name is Dr. Mary Neal, and she was an orthopedic spine surgeon. She's since retired. In 1999, as you can see from the picture, she and her husband loved kayaking, and so they wanted to do real adventurous kayaking. So they went to the country of Chile, where apparently there is a really kind of dangerous river that you can go on. And they wanted to really push themselves, and so they went down the river that day in 1999, and she went over a kind of like a drop-off in the river. And her kayak went straight nose first down into the water and got jammed in the river. And she was pretty sure her legs were broke. She couldn't get out of her kayak. And then the force of all the water was pinning her in the kayak underwater. And she died. But I just said she retired recently. Well, we've been talking a lot about this year, these near-death experiences. She was a Christian, and she said what happened. By the way, if you've ever been afraid of death, you got to read the book Imagine Heaven by John Burke, and your fear of death will be gone. You won't need to be afraid of it. She said what happened was she met God, and she had this overwhelming experience with God's love. She said what struck her was that God himself was so utterly satisfying that she had no desire to leave his presence. That is what they all say. They just don't want to leave his presence. She said, I was absolutely overcome by the sense of being home, of being where I truly belonged. I had no desire to return. And she said, she loved her husband, she loved her children. Yet in comparison to experiencing God's love directly, those loves, she said, seemed pale. And she even admitted years later feeling really guilty for saying this because she didn't want her kids to think that she didn't love them. She did. She loved them like every mom would, right? She was simply saying that God's presence was so complete that all she wanted was to remain there. I love stories like that. I just listen to the podcast, Imagine Heaven, all the time now to hear stories like that. And this is what people say when they come back from these near-death experiences. I encountered a love so overwhelming that it completely reordered everything I wanted. And their desires changed, and their wills changed, and their lives changed. It's just like the brilliant theologian Huey Lewis once said, that's the power of love, right? It's the power of love. Now, is that song in your mind? It's the power of love. When these people encounter this love, they are never the same. They're never the same. And whether you believe it or not, God loves you with a love that I cannot define, whether you believe that or not. And whether you believe it or not, God is pursuing you with his love every single moment of your life. Whether you believe that or not. And someday you will experience it. And so the most important part of our time on earth is related to the love of God. First, to receiving his love into our life through his son Jesus Christ, but then to learn to love him in return. That's what it's all about. And we know that's what it's all about. It's because Jesus was once asked, he was asked, what is the most important commandment in the Bible? And he said, the most important commandment is this: you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And then love your neighbor as yourself, he said. That's what it's all about. It's all about love. So if this is what it's all about, and I believe Jesus, when he said this is what it's all about, this is the most, so think about this. This is Jesus coming from heaven to earth, the perfect Son of God living among us, saying, you want to know what is the most important thing? Love God with all of you. So that raises some questions in my mind that I want you to be thinking about right now. How are you doing with Jesus' command when he said this is the most important thing? How are you doing with it? So my first question is, do you love God? Can you honestly say that you love him? I mean, we know what it is to love people, right? We love people. There are people in my life I love. We love things, right? Sports teams, certain kind of foods, right? There are things we love, and we say that. And Jesus says, the most important thing is that you love God. Do you love God? And do you love him more this year than you did last year, the year before? In other words, is your love for him really growing? So we're in a series that we started last week called Alive Again. And we're learning how to love God exactly as Jesus said, with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and even our neighbor as ourself. So what I want to do is ask you to open up your program, take out the notes that you'll find inside, grab your notes, grab a pen. We're going to talk today about how to love God with all your mind. I'm only going to do part one of this. This is going to be a two-part message. If you know me, you know I do not like to do two-part messages because I know not everybody can come back for the next week, especially in the summertime. My goodness. So I'm just going to encourage you, if you miss any of the messages in the series, to go ahead and just catch up online. We always post them online, usually by Monday or Tuesday. But we're going to talk about this today, and we're going to jump right in. So how do you learn to love God with all your mind? And, of course, welcome to those of you who are watching online. I love to hear the stories of people who are watching. So if you ever want our notes, go to our website at Peniel Church Life, and you can get these. So let's jump into this. First thing, and this is what we talked about last week, but I've got to start with this, and it's already filled in for you. That's why. It's because this was our topic last Sunday. But you have to see how these things tie together. So remember, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. So that's what we started with last week. Heart and spirit and will are the same in the Bible. So this is the chart that we really like. So it comes from an author named Dallas Willard, his brilliant book, Renovation of the Heart. And he points out in the book that in the Bible, heart, will, and spirit are the same. And so we started with this, and we said your heart or your will or your spirit, this is the executive center of your life. So what Jesus taught is that we live from that place right there. We live from our heart, which is weird if you don't understand what the heart really is. The heart in the Bible, or your will, you get what the will is. Your will is your power to choose a course of action. Your will decided to get up this morning and come here to church. That was your will that made that decision. Or, another word, Jesus would substitute just as easily as the word heart. Your heart decided. Now, we don't think of it in those terms, right? Will makes sense, heart doesn't, but in the Bible, they're the same. You just need to lock that in your mind. Your heart, your will, is the power to choose a course of action. It's where all of your decisions come from, and it's a source of your character. And we know this from Jesus. Look at what Jesus said. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up where? In his heart. And what does an evil man bring? Well, it brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. So when you look around at society right now, we see some really good people doing some good things, and we see some bad people doing some really bad things, right? And Jesus would say that by the time you get to their behavior, when you look at someone's behavior, all it is a reflection of what's in the heart of that human being. Because behavior is just a reflection on the outside of what's going on inside the heart of that human. That's what Jesus would say. And it is, listen, your heart is precious, precious, precious to God. He wants your heart. He wants your will. It's what he looks at most when he looks at a human being. The prophet Isaiah said that God said, I, the Lord, search the heart, and I examine the mind. By the way, there's the first two together, right? So he searches what's in our heart, and he examines what's in our mind. And notice this arrow coming in. I don't always talk about this, but remember what I said? God is always, always pursuing you with love because he loves you. And so that's what this arrow into your heart or your will is all about, is that his words and his spirit are always trying to get this, to get your heart, to capture your heart and will. And sometimes Christians even say, many of you have been in churches where you've heard Christians say, you need to invite Jesus into your heart. Now, there's a big pushback against that phrase in American Christianity right now. They're like, you can't say that. You can't tell people to invite them in your heart. There's nowhere in the Bible that says that. I don't know why they talk like that, but that's how they talk. And so, right, where would we ever get a verse, an idea like that? Well, I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being so that Christ may dwell in your hearts. This is what he wants. He wants my will, my heart, the center of who I actually am, from which all my decisions and behavior flows. He wants it. And here's what we know. If he gets it, when you see a human being whose heart is connected to God, you see two incredible things. The first is you see God's power working in that person and through that person to change circumstances in this world that cannot be changed by human effort. If it's human effort, that's just humans. But when it's God changing something that only God can do, that's the offer. And the other thing is when he gets your heart, when we voluntarily bring our will and our heart to him, then he begins to change our character. And of the two, I used to think that the first one was more important than the second one. I do not believe that anymore. I do not believe that. We're going to talk about that in this series. What God wants most is to reshape my character so that I look and act and sound like Jesus. That's the priority with God. It's his priority in your life. He wants to reshape who you are so that you are like his son. We've got so much to talk about in this series. So how do we connect our heart to God? And again, we talked about this last week. If you want to hear it, go back and listen to last Sunday's message. But ultimately, this is it. It is through daily surrender. Jesus said that we are to take up our cross every day. I bring my will to God every day and I say, your will be done, right? That's why I chose the songs to sing today. For those of you who are watching online, you don't know what we sang. We sang the song about, Father, not my will, but yours be done. And it's in that constant surrender, moment by moment to God, that we get to experience his activity in our life, changing us and changing the world around us. That's all through surrender. So hopefully you can see how important your heart is to God and how important your heart is to your life. So now, time to move into the second circle, and now we need to understand our mind. So that sentence may sound strange to some of you. You're like, Brian, I know what my mind is. Why are we going to talk about this? Because this doesn't seem all that important. And here you just told us you're going to break this into two parts. Yep, I sure am. There's more to cover with this than I can ever get through in one. Need to understand your mind. So again, look at the second circle here. So this is what Jesus wants. He wants our heart, our will. But the mind is where your thoughts and feelings are located, and it is completely connected to your will. So I'm going to show you that. So much fun to talk about. So our mind, if you read Dallas Willard's book, Renovation of the Heart, you see that our mind includes things like ideas, images, information, and the ability to think, which is why Chicago Bear fans struggle so much with all of this. So it's like, ability to think. Sorry. Hammond Bear fans. That's what I should have said. Bear fans. Okay, so when Dallas was writing the book, he said, of these four things that make up your mind, the first two are the most important, your ideas and your images. So this just all blew me away when I learned all this. So let me talk to you about ideas, right? You all get the concept of ideas. Some of you have the idea, boy, I wish I would not have gotten up today for church, because why did I need to come and hear this, right? That's the idea in your mind. Ideas are assumptions about reality. They're the ways that we automatically interpret life. So it's like your brain goes on autopilot. These are the things we believe without even trying. So let me push you on this, okay? Because I really want you to think about this. So you have people in the room right now. There are people, or people who are listening to me. Some of you have some of these ideas in your mind, and they're automatically there. Some of you believe that God is good. And you believe it despite circumstances that you've been through that have been extremely painful, and nothing changes that underlying idea, right? That God is good. Nothing changes it. You believe it. You believe that prayer works, and it's reflected in the way you pray. You believe that everyone deserves love, even your enemies. What happens if you believe that? What do you do with your enemies? You forgive them, right? You believe that you are completely safe in God's love no matter what. And so you are seldom ever afraid. But isn't it true in America today? There are other ideas that people have. That God doesn't care about me. There are a lot of people in America who used to be Christians until that idea took root in their mind, usually through something painful, and they came to the conclusion that God does not care about me, and that idea now directs the course of their life. There are plenty of Christians who do not believe prayer works, that it matters at all. And the proof of that, by the way, is always in, do you pray? If you don't pray, regardless of the lip service you give to prayer, what do you actually believe about prayer? You don't believe in it because you do not pray. And usually it's rooted in the first one, because on some level you have this idea that God doesn't care about what your problems are anyway. Many people believe if you harm me, watch out, because I am justified in any response I want. I mean, all of our movies and TV shows are all about this. It is the idea that our culture completely accepts. And then many Christians, and I've done this one a million times wrong, if a problem comes up, who's responsible to take care of the problems in Brian's life? Oh, Brian. I got this, right? And that's how we live. And some of you have these ideas in your head. Now, will these ideas affect how you feel and how you act? So that's all part of your heart and your will. Do you see how your mind and your will are completely connected? Those first two circles, your heart, your will, and your mind, they are completely connected. So that's really critical, and we're going to talk about that. So, I'm so sorry to do this for those of you who are regular attenders, but I'm going to talk about him again. So, if you come here, I talk about George Mueller all the time. But it was in prepping this sermon this week that it was the first time I really examined the idea of why I can't stop thinking about this guy. I'd never really thought about it until this week. So for those of you who don't know the story of George Mueller, you obviously don't attend very often here because I talk about him all the time. George Mueller, as you can see by the age of the picture, he lived in Bristol, England in the 1800s at a time when if you were an orphan, your mom and dad died, and you didn't have a relative to take you in, go read Charles Dickens. Go read, those books from that time period. What happened to those kids? They begged on the streets. They worked in poorhouses. They stole for a living. They went to prison. 5-year-olds in prison. That was not an uncommon thing in that time period. It's mind-blowing to us today. That's just how they dealt with the problem. So these kids were, horrible lives, and then they froze to death, starved to death, were taken advantage of by evil people, or wound up in prison. It was just heartbreaking to think about and impossible for us to imagine today, but that was the world in which George Mueller lived. And the Bible repeatedly says that if you follow Jesus, and part of your responsibility in the eyes of God is to care for widows and orphans, and he lists orphans continually. And so he was like, I can't live in a world like this anymore. I've got to do something. And so he began to take in orphans, and he would pray about it. God, do you want us to take it? Yes. Okay, so he took in orphans, started taking in more and more orphans, and you know the story from there. In his lifetime, without any money, he cared for 10,000 children. 10,000 children, no money. And not just, barely surviving. Built orphanages completely debt-free. Hired teachers, paid their salaries, all the equipment, the things you need if you're a student in a school, everything. All the food, all the medicine that they needed, the clothes, everything. And he never asked a human being for prayer. He just brought his needs to God, and God provided through people. God never once, to my knowledge, dropped a bucket of money from heaven into George's lap after prayer. So think about what God was doing and how these circles all align. So George Mueller gets this idea in his mind. Prayer, God is so faithful to the promises he's made in the Bible that I can trust him with every need I have because he promised to meet all my needs. And so he would bring his needs to God. And what would God do? God would go to all the Christians around and he would put it in their heart. Remember that arrow coming in? Because he had to get the heart of these Christians in the area. And he would put it on their heart that's like, you know what? You should give some money to help George and those orphans. Because George wasn't asking. And God works in the heart of human beings. That's why prayer is so incredibly powerful. And so one after another, people just started giving him money and giving him food, giving him resources, giving, and not in answer to what he was doing, but as a response to God in their working in their will or their heart. And in his lifetime, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And like I said, 10,000 orphans' lives were completely changed. Okay, so I love the story, talk about it all the time. But there's a reason I can't stop thinking about it and why I read his biography every few years, all the way through again. It's because I have an idea. And I can't get this idea out of my head. If God is willing to partner with George in this world to do all of this, well, then I bet he's willing to partner with me, too. Do you think he's willing to partner with you, too? I promise you, he is. And the greatest adventure is waiting for us. And I believe that idea. And the idea drives the behavior. Ideas are incredibly powerful, but it's not the only thing. You've got images. Dallas says that images are even more powerful than ideas, which will make sense in a second. They're pictures in your mind that carry emotional force, right? They're more powerful than ideas because they carry that emotion. So, think with me for a second about this. If I were to ask you, what was the most painful moment of your life? The most painful moment of your life. If you actually tried to answer the question, your brain showed you a picture, right? It didn't spell some sentences in your mind, did it? When I was in 4th grade, my mom and dad got divorced. And so I can remember, to this day, 47 years later, standing in the entryway of that home, looking out through the window, watching my dad pack up his little blue Toyota pickup truck and drive out of the driveway. Almost 5 decades ago. Images are incredibly powerful because they carry emotion. And the image you have in your mind of the most painful moment in your life, it carries emotion with it, doesn't it? But you can spin that around too. Tell me about the happiest moment of your life. And now all of a sudden you have a different emotion, right? Attached to an image. This is why images are so incredibly powerful. So, as a part of this series, I'm going to ask you to do something I don't know if I've ever asked you to do. I'm going to ask you during this series to memorize Psalm 23. Some of you have never memorized a Bible verse in your life. Don't be intimidated. It's short. It's about eight verses long. Here's how you do it. What I would recommend is just put it on your phone and read it out loud 3 times a day for 30 days. That's all it takes. It will take you about 4 minutes a day. So just mute the commercials during your favorite TV show and read it. That's all it'll take. And in about 30 days, you'll have Psalm 23 memorized. So I've been doing this for a little while, and I use the New Living Translation version of the Bible, so I don't really care what version you want to use. But do you know how many images and ideas about God are present in Psalm 23? Do you know this? It's packed full of images that you and I are going to need at certain points in our lives. Let me walk you through it. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. I love that version. That's why I like the New Living Translation version. When Jesus is your shepherd, then you always have what you need. By the way, if you don't have what you need today, guess what that's telling you? Who's your shepherd? Yeah, you. If that verse said, Brian is my shepherd, the next sentence would be, he does not have what he needs, right? But when the Lord is your shepherd, and you are in this surrendered position before God, you have all that you need. And if you don't have all you need, you know what's going wrong. Okay? The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need. And you think about what he does next for me. He leads me, or he lets me rest in green meadows. So what does a sheep need a lot of, right? Food. So he's like, yeah, just it's like there's so much, just lay down. You ever laid down and eaten? That's awesome. It's like, yeah. It's like, I mean, picture the bounty of that. Yeah, just lay down, have a snack. It's like he lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams, because if you don't know anything about sheep, they're incredibly scared. If the water's moving too fast, they won't drink from it. So where does he lead me? Peaceful streams. And what is he doing this for? He tells us, he renews my strength. This is God. This is God. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Did you know that's a promise? Any of you have any big decisions you have to make right now? You don't know what to do? Did you know that Jesus promised that when he's your shepherd, he will guide you along the right path? That's what he'll do. Then if you read Psalm 23, you know that right here the verses really change. So it's like, hey, look what God's doing. It's like life is good, right? And you have those seasons. Some of you are in a life is good right now season of life, right? And then you know what's coming. Dark valleys, right? Anyone want to think that they're going to go through this life without hitting any dark valleys? Doesn't take very long to be alive to realize that that's not true. You will encounter dark valleys. And what does he say? Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid because I am with me. And I've got lots of money in my savings account, and I'm really, really smart, and I can just figure it out. That's the American way. But that's not what the verse says. When he's your shepherd, even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid. By the way, if you're afraid, guess who's not your shepherd? Because when he's your shepherd and you are in this relationship with him, you know what happens? He tells you, your rod and staff protect and comfort me. Is that the kind of relationship you have with God today? Where even in times that should terrify you, you are not afraid because of his personal care. And then what does he say then? Probably right now, my favorite verse, because this is the image I have in my mind. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. Right? That seem about right for enemies for sheep? And it's like, think about the imagery that's created in a picture like this, right? The sheep is completely vulnerable, right? If those wolves charge, that sheep can't fight them off. Sheep don't fight off wolves. Who fights off wolves? Shepherds. And so, this is critical. This is new to me. I only learned this year. Even though I've said different things like this, I only started to believe it this year. I should say it that way. The idea is now in my head, and I can't get it out of there. God's goal, did you know God's goal for your life is that you would never, ever be afraid again? No matter how many wolves are at the door. Never. Not because you're so rich and you're so smart and you're so strong, but because he is so great that you never need to be afraid again. And he prepared, and he's so powerful, he's like, I'm going to prepare a feast for you in the presence of these guys. And you're totally safe with me. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. And then it ends with this, and I love this sentence. It's critical that you understand this. Remember, I said this at the beginning. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life. It is so important that you understand that this God is pursuing you with goodness and unfailing love. That's what he's after. Some of you have been raised in churches where you were taught that he is pursuing you because he wants to damage you or punish you, or he's a mean, nasty God and you should be afraid of him like that. Oh my goodness. Memorize Psalm 23. He's pursuing you with two things, goodness and unfailing love. Is that the idea you have in your mind of God? Why? So I can live in the house of the Lord forever. Do you hear both of these things, the ideas and images in these verses? Ideas of God's personal offer to care for us, his personal protection in a dangerous world, his personal guidance throughout the world, no matter the circumstances, and then images like, there are no real enemies in this world. Nothing to be afraid of, not when God, the Lord is my shepherd. Because he's the Lord. And he is not afraid of any wolves. So, this is why it's so important. So here's the key, and I want you to write this on your notes. Your heart is drawing its power for action from your mind. The decisions you make about God and life and what's important in this world, all of those decisions are coming from what you think, the ideas you have about God and what's real and what's important. They are fueling how you live, how you behave, and most importantly, what you think is the real treasure of this world. That's all coming from your mind, and it's fueling your will and the way that you're living. It's so important to understand this. That's why Dallas Willard said, he said it's brilliantly, he said that ultimate freedom we have as individuals is the power to select what we allow or require our minds to dwell upon and think about. Now, some of you may struggle with this idea because American culture doesn't tell you that your feelings come from your thoughts, do they? They don't tell you that. Well, they tell you that all of your feelings come from your heart, right? So they tell you your feelings come from. It's wrong. Do not believe it. Your feelings 100% come from your mind. And again, people have been noticing this apart from what Jesus has been saying. So I showed you this picture years ago. It's one of my favorite pictures from a brilliant book called Crucial Conversations. So if you ever want to know how to have better conversations when they're tough, that book is, to my knowledge, not written by Christians, brilliant. He said, this is what happens. You see and hear something, you tell a story about it. That story that you tell in your mind, because your brain is a storytelling machine, determines how you feel and what you do. So this is your will, and it's connected to this, your mind, because your mind and the stories you tell when you go through anything determine how you feel about it. And that determines how you live. So this is, again, to my knowledge, not even Christians talking about this. So let me challenge you with something else. I talk about this magazine regularly, The Voice of the Martyrs. I really want to encourage you to sign up for this. You can get an email every week with just a summary. And I absolutely love my weekly summary. Let me tell you why. The idea it puts in my mind and what I see from this, because some of you don't understand what's happening in this world. For those of you who are watching online, if you ever are, I know people watch from all over the country. I get some messages from people. And so I know that it may be hard to get to Peniel, and someday you may want to come to Peniel. If you come to Peniel, the hardest thing about getting to Peniel will be finding it, right? All the people in the room know. And I know some of the people in the room, the first time they tried to find it, couldn't find it. So just follow your map, GPS, because you're not going to find it any other way. Because it's out in the middle of nowhere in a cornfield. Super hard, right? That's pretty much going to be the hardest thing about getting to Peniel unless you hit a deer, right? I mean, other than that, that's the biggest challenge about being a Christian wanting to attend Peniel Church in rural Wisconsin. But that's not what's happening in the world. If you today are in North Korea and somebody tells you about Jesus, and the idea of Jesus is so wonderful to you, that he's not just a God of love. I mean, love that isn't put into action is just words, and all of us get sick of words, right? You don't want somebody to tell you, you want to see that love in action, and so God, because he loved us, put his love into action. His son came into the world and died on a cross for us, and then rose again. Greater love is no one than this, and someone lay down their life for their friends, and it's what he did. And so you hear this idea of Jesus, and you're like, oh my goodness, that he could love me that much that he died for me? I want to give my life to him. Well, if you make that decision in North Korea, then here is guaranteed your future. Hiding, secrecy. If you are discovered, if a neighbor turns you in for the cash reward they will get by turning you in, then you will be arrested, fired from your job, your property will be confiscated, you will be beaten and tortured, and if you don't recant, they will kill you. And that's one country. That's just North Korea. In Nigeria, have you heard about what's happening there? Are Christians just being slaughtered simply because they believe in Jesus? In place after place around the globe, your decision to attend a church service is literally deciding, do I want to risk my life today and die? We don't think like that. And so I love the stories because these Christians are so inspiring. You know, Christians like this who his home was burned, all of his property destroyed, and that they write about being full of joy and full of excitement. That's not the emotion I would have, right? Is it the emotion you would have? Of course not. And yet what changes them? Well, if you read in the stories, story after story, it's an idea that fuels this incredible emotion of joy and makes them stand in countries where it's not safe to do this and say, even if you kill me, I will not stop following Jesus. And what's the idea? The words of Jesus. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. And the idea is so powerful that it triggers the emotion of joy, and their will says, I don't care what you do to me. You will never stop me from being a disciple of Jesus. All right, so we have just scratched the surface on the power of your mind. There's so much more that I can't wait to talk to you about next week. But I want you to think about a couple of things as we finish today. Do you understand that your will is drawing its fuel from your mind? So the decisions, the behavior that you choose, they are coming from the ideas and images and thoughts you have in your mind. So here's my big question. Is loving God the top priority of your life? Did you walk in here today saying, oh my goodness, if God could grant me one wish today, this would be the one wish. I would wish he would open me up so that I could love him with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. Is that the one thing? Is that the one thing you walked in here for? Or if he said you can have any wish in the world, would it have been something else? For many, many Christians, loving God isn't the top priority of their life. For much of my life, it wasn't. My success was disastrous. Some of you, the honest answer to this question is you are really complacent about God. You don't think much about spiritual things. Some of you went days and days last week and God never even popped into your mind. Okay, so that's behavior, right? So back up. And you got to go into your head. And you got to say, what idea is in my mind today that is causing my will, my choices to say, God doesn't really matter. He's not really that important. Does this make sense? Your behavior If complacency and apathy toward God is here, then you have an idea that's fueling how you feel and how you live. Do you know what the idea is? Some of you do, some of you don't. Good. Here's what I'd say. Would you bow your heads? So first, for those of you who are sitting here going, Brian, that's kind of me today. There is a lot of apathy and complacency about spiritual things in my life. I'm honest, right? Then say this to him. Say, God, would you please show me the idea in my mind that's creating this apathy inside of me, that's causing me not to want to love you, or not to see the experience of your love as even important. And just make that your prayer this week. Now, for some of you, spiritually, you have never made the decision to let him have full access to your heart. Listen, you can trust him with it. Some of you have the idea in your head, if I do that, he's going to take away everything I really love. Okay. Well, you're never going to surrender to a God like that. But he is a God who loves you and who wants good things for you, like every loving parent does. And if you want this God in your life today, you can have him because he loves you so much. With your head bowed, your eyes closed, you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I want you. I've heard that you died on the cross for me. And you loved me enough to give your life up for me. And I believe. So with this little tiny bit of faith I have, I turn to you. Please forgive me. I open myself willingly to you. Come make your home inside. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, we want to thank you for taking some time to watch this service today. We hope that you found it to be something that will really help you in your spiritual growth. If it raised questions for you that you want to ask us, you can go to our website, again, at Peniel Church Life, and you can send a message to us through our website. Or if you've made a spiritual commitment and you want us to know about it, we would love to send you some follow-up material in the mail. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us through the website. And as always, thanks again for watching.